The competitive 40K network presents Art of War. Art of War. Strategy and tactics. Discussions with the best players on the planet. Now your host, Nick Nanavati.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Art of War 40K podcast. I'm your host, Nick Nanavati, and this week we are joined by a very brand new, exciting, awesome guest, Jeffrey Jew. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Nick. I'm super honored to be on the show, so thanks for having me.
Of course, man. You've very much earned it. You went all the way to second place out of a 454-person super major in Tacoma with this brand new Subterranean Assault Tyranids. Congratulations, Jeff. That's amazing.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it was really fun to play NIDS, and I was really happy to go that far. So yeah, thanks a lot.
You're very welcome. And that's exactly what we're here to unpack. We're basically going to first get to know you, Jeff. You're brand new to the podcast. Welcome. And then we're going to get to know your play style, how you got into Warhammer, all that good stuff, along with, of course, your army list. We're going to break that down in great, deep detail for all of our viewers. Then the good stuff on Patreon for our big fans, our subscribers, the people who support the show for coming up on 300 episodes. So your support is endless. And that's where we're going to go game by game by game through the Tacoma Open. So it's going to be really exciting, especially with an army like Subterranean Assault. They have the luxury of being able to change their approach, being a deep strike up and down army every single game to adapt to the situation. So you're not going to want to miss that. Jeff, are you ready?
Absolutely. Let's do it, man.
Let's do it. Tell me about you. That's what I want to know. Tell me how you got into Warhammer. Give me a little spiel about Jeff.
All right. You got it, man. Yeah, I'll tell a little about it. I grew up in Northern California. I played at a local store called Gamescape when I was a little kid, and I fell in love with Blood Angels. I was probably like 10 years old. My parents, they wouldn't buy me models, but they would buy me like a book. Like if we saw a book in a store and I wanted it, they'd buy me that, which is a pretty smart, parenting technique. So they let me buy the Blood Angels Angels of Death Codex. This is like second, third edition, something like that. And then eventually I got a couple of models. I played on the floor with my friend Jesse, and we didn't use the real rules or anything like that. But I just fell in love with the IP and just Warhammer for what it was at the time. And then years later, this is kind of a funny story because it actually involves you, Nick. I joined a company called Riot Games. We make League of Legends, and me and the co-founder Mark Merrill, we just became really good friends. He plays Warhammer too. And so for the next 10, 15 years, we would play kitchen table Warhammer with each other at his house. And I'd play Blood Angels and he'd play Eldar. And so we just did this once every month or two for years. And then I think in 20...
That's amazing, dude. Wow.
Yeah.
I met Mark at LVO many years ago, and it was just a brief passing, but I very much follow his work with Riot Games and all that. And that's awesome, dude. I had no idea you were so involved.
Exactly, man. And this is honestly that when you met him, this is where this is leading to and how I got into competitive 40K because, we were playing, it was like him, two other guys, JP and Colt. We would just join up and play at his house. We were watching LVO, I think in 2018, you can correct me on the date. And this is the year of the infamous Alex Fennell and Tony, I'm not going to say his last name, game, where at the time, 40K sportsmanship was kind of in a different place, as you know way better than me. But let's just say it that Alex Fennell was an absolute gentleman when this Tony guy, who we didn't know, pulled this bad sportsmanship thing on him. And, Alex Fennell took it like a champ. He didn't try to argue. He did what the judges told him. And Mark was really upset about this. And we were all upset about this. And Mark reached out to Alex, I think on Twitter or something, and said, hey, man, whatever money you were going to earn from this, I want to donate it to you because you deserve to win this game. You shouldn't lose this poor sportsmanship. And Alex Fennell, he was super kind. He said, you know what? That sounds awesome, Mark. Why don't we play on stream next year for fun? And then I'll match your donation and we'll give it to charity. And then, Games Workshop also matched it. So it turned a negative event into a really positive event. And honestly, 40K sportsmanship has come so far since that moment. And then obviously in the next round, Tony, he got his coming too. So it kind of all worked out. As I won't get into the details here. You can add anything you want. So what happens is Mark's like, I'll do it. I'll play this game. And then we realize we've been playing kitchen table 40K for 10, 15 years, and we are not good. You know what I mean? We're not building meta lists. We're just rolling dice. We're having fun. And he's going to play the semi-finalist on stream, the next LVO. He's like, oh crap, guys, I gotta train up. So he enlists me and JP and Colt. We just start we start researching, we start playing real competitive 40K. I go to an RTT that weekend. I go 0-3 like right away, but I love it. I'm like, this is awesome. I'm learning all this stuff. Let's keep playing. And then needless to say, Mark goes to LVO. He meets you, he meets Alex, he plays on stream. He does totally great. It was all worth it. We all go to LVO too. We play. I go, I think 3 wins, 1 loss, 2 ties. I'm super happy. I'm like, this is so fun. And I just never stopped playing after that. So that's just how I got into it.
Wow. Well, it's such a small world. So just to put some more details into that story, basically that was the year I had won LVO. And
yes.
Right after Alex got screwed by this Tony figure, it was a real gotcha type maneuver. We don't have to get into the weeds.
No, it's okay.
But he made a very similar blunder against me in the finals, which was streamed, of course. And normally, you know me, I'm not the type of person to catch you on a gotcha type moment. Like go ahead. But because he had totally wronged Alex just right before, I was like, no, man, I'm going to hold you to the standard you play at, which is pretty terrible, and see how you feel. And that just little piece of justice seemed to catch on like wildfire amongst the Warhammer community, and it really seems as though collectively the community kind of putting an end to the gotcha hammer has been fighting that battle anyway, and really embrace like, let's just play by intent and all that stuff. And I don't want to take credit for that, that's far beyond my reach, but it was a good moment for the community, and to see Mark really get inspired by that. Then all that money got donated to charity as a response to the whole situation. It was beautiful, like you said. So it's just mind blowing to me, Jeff, that you are so connected to this without necessarily being involved, but it's still really cool to see your little part helping Jeff get into it and go to the tournament. So tell me about your first RGT. You go 0-3.
Yeah. I went 0-3. My first round, I was playing. So this is kind of gross. I'll say this. The first thing I did was I was playing guard at the time, Blood Angels. I was playing Blood Angels at the time. And I saw that I should be running what was called the Loyal 32 back then. I didn't know. So I was like, okay, I have 12 guardsmen or 30 guardsmen, what it was. So I go to this tournament playing Blood Angels with, I think, 30 guardsmen to get CP. And I didn't know what I was doing. And I played 3 absolute beasts in my local meta. I had no idea. I played a guy named Jeff Poole. He's helped me get better throughout the years. I played against Danny Kwan and Jonathan Starks, and these are in California. These are all good players.
These are like top players. I played Jeff at that same LVO to make top or in top 8. I think.
Okay, yeah, there you go. I had no idea, and the coolest thing about it, and I'll give credit to Jeff right now. He helped me through that game. He asked me if I would play on a clock. I never played the clock before. I told him I've never played clock, but I'll have to do it at LVO. And I was going to time out, and he helped me with a bunch of stuff. Same with Danny, same with Jonathan. And even though I went 0-3, I had a blast, and I learned so much in that first weekend. And little did I know I was training with the absolute biggest weights on because, I'll still lose games with these guys today. But it was such a cool community. I learned so much in that weekend. I went to one more RTT before LVO. I went 1 and 2. So I was like, oh man, huge improvement. I put a Castellan in my list before LVO. I was like, okay, I'm not winning with these guys. Let me throw a Castellan in there. And then, I had a great time. All my games were awesome. I think, it was just a great learning experience, and that early feeling of being bad at something and knowing, hey, it's okay. Like, I know I'm not going to be good. I've been playing kitchen table for like 15 years, and then improving rapidly. That was just so satisfying, and it's just such a fun community, especially in SoCal. We have really helpful teams and groups, and it's just been a great experience for me.
And that is really amazing, Jeff. I'm so glad we're getting to spend this time together. So tell me a little bit about your journey getting better. You started at 0-3. I know you played against these amazing players. So the good old saying of, if you're not the smartest person in the room, find a different room. I mean, you found better people to play against, and they just elevated you. But what did that look like on the table? What were you struggling with? What did you learn? How did you get better at Warhammer?
It's a really good question. I'll say it because it's authentically true. Once this started happening, I've been a subscriber to this podcast since 2019, I believe. I've listened to you and Adam Camilleri and the other Art of War podcasts that have come and gone this whole time. And I don't have a lot of free time in my normal life. For example, I know there's a cap on me getting better because I can't play a lot of TTS games. I can only play 1 to 2 games, real games a week. And so what I need to do is I need to consume content while I'm doing other things, while I'm doing chores or working out or doing whatever. I'm listening to you. I'm listening to other podcasts. And in my local area, I'm on Discord. I play on a team now called Xenos Petting Zoo. I know you're super familiar, and
Oh
they
yeah.
help me. They help me elevate my game. A lot of amazing players on that team. And yeah, basically for me, I've joined local leagues. Jeff Poole runs our LA league, in fact, and I've been in that league for 5+ years. So I just do whatever I can to kind of like going to the gym in some ways, like have groups that kind of hold me accountable for at least getting a game a week if I can, for being part of an active discussion, and then learning from players that are better than myself, through content like this. So yeah, it's been really helpful, and we live in the golden age of 40K, in my opinion, where a small player like me can still have an impact in the meta somehow, but it's also, there's a lot of more materials. I'm not just reading like Blood of Kittens lists from 10 years ago. Who knows whose list this is? I'm just going to take their advice. So it's really come a long way.
That's really awesome, Jeff. So I appreciate it. I appreciate the long-term loyalty to Art of War. I'm so glad you've been actually getting helped by the material and all that. That's really what it's about.
100%.
Wow. So talk to me about what you have found through all of your various learnings. Like, what is your play style and approach to the game?
Yeah, my playstyle has changed a lot over the years because I started playing as Blood Angels, and so I thought pressure was my style. And honestly, I was quite bad at it because I didn't have good fundamentals, and I didn't even know what that meant. I was just throwing my units out and trading for nothing, or trading down in points constantly. So after I played a lot of Blood Angels, I played a more kind of sit back and shoot army. I played Guard, and then I played Admech, and I found shooting to be a lot easier because I didn't have to risk as much. But now, obviously, I kind of know the trade-offs between the two, where, if you're a shooting army and you whiff, well, you have no chance of accomplishing your goals. Whereas obviously, if you can play something that gets up in your opponent's face, you might kill them, but you also might just steal points off them. So I started with Blood Angels. I switched to more shooting-based armies. And then honestly, to challenge myself during COVID, I picked up Tyranids, and I started painting up a ton of Tyranids just for fun. And then I played orcs most recently. This year, I've been playing a lot of orcs. So I've been learning how to play kind of what I think my play style is, which is more like beta strike counter punching. I prefer to, if I can do nothing, that's my preferred style. If I can do the bare minimum and win the game, I think that's where I like to be. But these days, I played a lot of pressure and a lot of like up down detachments, like Ultramarines, Vanguard, Subterranean Nids, Death Watch recently, because those kind of let you see what your opponent's doing and then do very little, and then all of a sudden be on the other side of the board doing a lot. And I think right now, especially in this chapter approved mission pack, you kind of want to do nothing given challenger cards. And so like, I can't play orcs anymore. I can't play full on pressure Nids, but what I think I can play is do a little bit, see where my opponent is, and then like hit them really hard when they have no chance of recovering, versus trying to get points early and then just giving them challenger cards, which is a bummer.
Yeah, that is really exciting. I love how you went from playing a shooting army to a melee army, and you highlighted that difference there, which I think a lot of people don't even really think about in the nuance. With shooting, you get the benefit of staying far away from your opponent and getting those shots in early. But melee, if you get there, you're really causing all kinds of issues for your opponent. You're move blocking them, you're contesting objectives, you change where the battle is happening. And that's a very interesting way to look at it. And I love that you picked up a melee army to kind of just broaden your horizons, grab your, broaden your repertoire and really learn Warhammer at a deeper level. And play person to person, Jeff. Like, I love that reactive,
Yeah.
passive play style. I think that's great. So you've kind of found more of a kindred with the up and down deep strike armies, Grey Knights, Tyranids, and obviously you did really well with Tyranids here. What do you like about those armies, and how do you find they handle the challenges of the mission? Just having to be in midfield, scoring primary, doing secondaries, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think that those kind of armies are strong because honestly, they let your opponent make mistakes. And at really high levels of Warhammer, it's kind of like sports in some ways. Like everyone knows how to play. So it's about how can you give your opponent too much to think about and tax their kind of brain economy, and also honestly do very little while scoring yours and making them have to go out and give you something to score yours. So for this Tyranid army, we're going to talk about it a lot, but a lot of the strength has really cheap kind of garbagey units you can throw out there. A lot of them have lone op. Your opponent has to do something to deal with it. You honestly don't have to move them more than onto your natural and say, hey, I'm just going to sit here and score 40 primary, I'm totally okay with that. Do you want to do anything about it? And then at the same time, you can hide the rest of your army either in reserves, in your deployment zone, which I did both times in the top tables of this tournament, and say, hey, I'm going to score 40 and I'm going to do great on my secondaries with a Biovore. Do you want to do anything about it? And as soon as they do, you can basically switch sides with, 50% of your damaging units and completely overrun that flank. And so it just really taxes your opponent in terms of understanding what you're going to do and have really safe fundamentals with units that can score primary really well, or at least threaten to score primary, and your opponent has to do a lot to either get in range or get access to them. So I really prefer that style, especially in this environment. I was playing orcs beforehand, like I said, before chapter approved, and I was in the opposite camp, which was, hey, pressure my opponent really hard, sit on them, don't let them get any primary, and then die over time. But sadly, due to changes recently with challenger cards and just like those armies getting weaker, I can't play that style. So I've just kind of adapted to a style that works in this mission pack.
Right, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense to me. I think that the approach to the game that you just identified is really great. How do you handle going first when you're basically reacting and trying to play the game as little as possible? Like going second, you have that natural bottom of turn advantage, and now even challenger cards help that further. How do you handle like the pressure of going first, giving all those passive control elements to your opponent? How do you wrestle that back?
That's a really great question. And honestly, I vastly do prefer going second. In Tacoma, I think I went 50-50 going first or second. So I had to deal with going first a bunch. It's honestly why I have a durable piece in my list. I have a single Norn Emissary, which is really strong, sitting on your natural objective. Pretty much your opponent can shoot it whenever they want to, but it takes, 2, 3, 4, 5 activations to kill in some armies. And so if I have to go first, which means I have to get some kind of advantage early, because I just assume my opponent, I'm not going to table them with Tyranids. They're going to get a good bottom turn. I have to have a really solid first couple turns, which means, Gargoyles, Lictors, and Norn Emissaries going out there, getting points and saying to my opponent, if you want to take me off these, you can, but you're going to probably trade down. So yeah, you might get bottom turn scoring, but I'm going to get access to 2 or 3 of your best units with my best units while you're shooting my trash or my Norn. So it's a little scarier place to be. I don't prefer it. If I could literally go second every single game, I absolutely would, especially with the up-down army. So that's kind of a given. But that's why I had to adapt my list to account for going first.
I really like that. Like actually making list choices to acknowledge like going first kind of sucks for the up down tier in army, and especially when it doesn't jive with your play style and your approach to the game. So like giving yourself something to do on first turn, like deliberately to make up for the fact that it kind of sucks, is a really great way to tech your army. Speaking of which, Jeff, just read off your list if you would. Like, what did you actually take to Tacoma?
All right, let's do it. So I'm Tyranids, and I'm playing the new detachment, Subterranean Assault. I think Games Workshop did a great job with this detachment, so thank you guys so much for putting this out there. It is top to bottom, Deathleaper, 1 Neurotyrant. He has an enhancement called Tremor Senses that gives me a 3-unit redeploy, and they can go back in strategic reserves. I don't know who goes first, though. The Swarmlord, he's my Warlord. The Trygon Prime, he has to take an enhancement to become the Prime, all around great unit. 2 sets of 10 Gargoyles that I use for primary stealing. A Biovore, I think is the first unit every tournament list has. 6 Hive Guard with Shot Cannon. I think we're going to talk about those guys. That is a current tech piece for the meta. A Lictor, 10 Neurogaunts. They're kind of just a trash unit. They basically don't have any rules. 1 Norn Emissary. 2x5 Raveners, which is how this list functions at all. A Tyrannofex, and 1 Zoanthrope unit of 6 Zoanthropes.
Wow. Okay. There's so much to unpack here, Jeff. I want to start with the Shot Cannon Hive Guard, but I should actually start with your strategy. How does this army play on the table? Give me the spiel.
Absolutely. So if folks are familiar with other up-down armies, like I played Vanguard at LVO one time, very much inspired by John Lennon's Vanguard. When you have access to up-down on basically any of your units, like Death Watch, Grey Knights, Necrons, you can basically play a toolbox list, and that's what this is. And what I mean by that is it has like one of everything. So it looks like just a pile of garbage, basically. But what it's trying to do is saying, hey, I'm going to have an exact right tool for every situation, but maybe only once. maybe twice, but we're going to say just once. And that's because, I can put all my tools either in reserve or in my deployment zone. And then depending on what my opponent does, I can pull up the right tool using the up down or the site to site transport stratagems we'll get to, and then basically match up the right profile into what they bring out. Besides those tools, which are like the Zoanthrope, the Trygon Prime, the shock cannons, and the Tyran effects, the rest is honestly scoring units. It's things that have loan op, like the 2 Lictor Deathleapers I have, the 20 Gargoyles, the Neurogonts, the Biovore. The rest is scoring. So what my opponents noticed was, hey, I'm actually somewhat aggressively cycling my CP with the Swarmlord, who gives me +1 CP, and I'm just scoring secondaries while trying to do basically nothing. And then I'm saving all these tools. I'm not exposing them at all until my opponent tries to answer me, because I'm perfectly fine going pretty much even on scoring, especially if I bottom turn, and then trying to win at the end. So it's a very reactive play style, but because you can up down your army and bring it in 6 inches of your opponent at any time, they both have to play around that. And it gives you a lot of options when it comes to the go turn.
Yeah, I love it. So you basically set some blown ups up on your expansion objective. You got a Biovore pooping out Spore Mines to help you with like secondaries. Your Tyranids, so like secondaries naturally kind of blow easily to the Gargoyles and the Lictors and the up down nature of your army. And then you basically force your opponent to do something about it, and like you can even put a Norn on the expansion or Norn on the middle objective, and now you're winning primary too. And then as they do something about it, they move up the table and they start interacting with you. You then counterattack with your Zoanthropes and your Trygon Prime and all that stuff. Is that the general gist?
That is the gist. And honestly, because of the up-down stratagem and the 3-unit redeploy, it's even better than some up-down or late game scoring armies people have placed, because with the stratagem and the enhancement, I can deploy these units that normally sit in reserve and then have to come down turn 3. But because they've started on the table and I've picked them up, it disobeys that round 3 limitation where I would have to bring it in. So there are multiple games where my Trygon Prime started on the board, I pick it up, and then it's turn 4. It's turn 3. My opponent's like, you have to bring everything in. But in reality, I've waited till turn 4 or later to actually attack them with it, which means that they're just having to screen and use real units, especially in a night meta, to screen their backfield while they wait for this Trygon to come in. That's honestly, it's going to hit once and it's going to hit hard and then it's going to die. But it's really the threat of, or the I could do this, that's powerful. Not even so much that it's coming in doing massive damage, which is honestly not a real thing.
Right. So it's a lot of like forcing the enemy to screen turn after turn after turn, and 6-inch deep strike screening is like super hard, if not impossible, for some of these elite armies out there. And then you get to tax their resources by killing whatever they're screening with, ideally. And eventually, turn 4, even, you just lay the hammer down. And the hammer doesn't have to, I guess, be that murderous, because Tyranids don't hit that hard, but it is enough to get some jobs done and win in the fights that you pick and choose.
If you are listening to this, it probably means you play Warhammer 40k. And if you're playing Warhammer, you know you need a lot of dice. Baron of Dice is where we get our dice from. They produce amazing different kinds of dice. We just recently got all kinds of different faction dice shipped to us, which we use on our stream games. But not only do they look really cool, but they're highly customizable. You can get different symbols, corners that are square, corners that are round, different shapes and sizes, different sided dice. It's all the rage. And they're customizable in color and design as well. They are so cool looking. Not only that, but they feel great to roll in your hands. I've never held dice that roll and feel this good. Not only that, but they are scientifically perfectly balanced. There are tons of case studies on people rolling thousands of dice and recording all the results that they get. And sometimes you might get a die that rolls just a few too many ones. We've all had to throw it out before. These dice are not like that. They are perfectly balanced to a T, thousands of rolls, perfect distribution. If you want to take your Warhammer game seriously and make sure the dice are not screwing you over, get some Baron of Dice dice.
Talk to me about your damage. Like, what does your damage look like from this army?
Yeah, it's a great question. Let's see. So let's skip down to the Zoanthropes led by the Neurotyrant. That's really the bread and butter unit in this army. I know a lot of really good subterranean armies are not running this unit. I understand why. It's extremely expensive. It's probably 300 something for the whole unit. The trick with this unit is they are only 24-inch range, but they have essentially 2 profiles. They have a las cannon with lethal hits, or they have a D3 blast 7 to D3 shot. So they're really good at both killing either one thing or like 2 or 3 squads, mostly 2 squads of Marines or Elves with split fire. And then they have a 2d6 flamer stapled on that's damage 2 with the Neurotyrant. So this unit is good into everything. There really isn't a profile that I wasn't happy to put it into. So if I needed something to happen, the Zoanthropes and the Tyrant, Neurotyrant are going to get it done. They're going to die pretty soon after. They do have 4 invulns, but they only have 24-inch range, and the Flamer's 18. So when I put it out, it means, hey, I'm probably going to almost nearly all in or put them in a place where they can't get shot back. So that's kind of the all-arounder. You know, the sexy tech here is obviously the 6 Hive Guard with shot cannons. You know, they've been receiving their penance from being too good for so long with the indirect impaler cannons. But in this case, it's 6 guys that have 2 shots each. And the profile is 7-1-3. So strength 7, AP 1, damage 3, which seems okay, but they have anti-vehicle 2-up. And in a Knights meta, that's pretty scary because Knights don't have 2-ups. They have 3-ups now. So if you can either remove their cover with one of the strats that we have access to or get a full line on them, which is pretty rare, you can put them on 4-ups. And, you know, you're going to wound 10 out of 12 times typically. So that's going to be pretty huge. I wouldn't bring this unit in a meta that wasn't full of Mortarians, Anvil, and Knights, but I knew going in, this was, especially on GW terrain, it was going to be a Knights fest. So I felt super good putting this unit in. They did work all weekend. It's really bad against armies that have only monsters, but honestly, it's really good into infantry based armies too. Neg 1, flat 3 is actually pretty good. And the last piece there is that they overwatch on 5s. And if they're standing on an objective I own, they overwatch on 4s. So what they do is, you put them down, you shoot something, it doesn't die usually, but it has to stand there or else it's going to get hit with, 9 to 12 more wounds. And that's really, really, really painful for the opponent. I have 2 more pieces to talk about. One is the Tyrannifex. It basically keeps my opponent honest. It's a 2-shot, big cannon. It's going to do D6 plus 6 per shot that goes through. You can blanks a save. It's tough. I wish I could take 2 because 1 is extremely unreliable. We are going to talk about it in part 2. Like, I got super lucky, and you got to get lucky to win some of these games. But I got super lucky in this finals games with how much damage this guy was doing. Yeah, he just keeps my opponent honest. They can't sit back there and expect to take 0 damage. And honestly, in a lot of my games, turns 1 and 2, all I'm doing is teleporting this Tyrannifex around my backfield and getting 2 shots into their best vehicle. People are not used to a teleporting, 48-inch range, very high damaging unit. So it keeps them honest. They can't just outrange me because the rest of my army is 24-inch range. And lastly, it's the Trygon Prime. He's just a night killer. Luckily, he gets his strength 11, neg 2, flat 3 with 12 attacks. So he's going to kill most things he goes into, but sadly he doesn't have an invuln. We don't have a single defensive strat, so he's going to die right afterwards. But just when you tell your opponent that profile at the start of the game, hey, by the way, this guy has 12 attacks at 11-3. That's pretty scary, and he's going to sit in reserve on my tray for at least 3 turns most games, and just keep my opponent honest. Like, they're plague burst crawlers, they're backfield tanks. They don't want to get hit. He can, he'll pick something up and tap something else. And so he's just a really good threat, but he can't take a punch. So even though I'm threatening them with the possibility of the damage, it's honestly more about the threat than the actual damage, because as soon as I use him, he will die. So it's not a lot after that. It goes down quite sharply. Not a lot of damage after that, mostly scoring. The Norn is okay. She's mostly defensive. But other than that, yeah, mostly I'm scoring. So I really have to make use of those 4 or 5 damaging units to get the job done.
Wow, and I can see how you're so reluctant to get the game going early, because your damage units they're not one use, but they are very careful and picky choosy about what your targets are and when you want to use them. So trying to rush into the game can be pretty dangerous for you. What if you play against an opponent who has that aggressive mindset and that aggressive approach to the game, and they just run straight at you, especially if they go first, right? And they have basically 2 turns before your deep strikes start happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had that in 2 of my games, one against Orcs and one against Imperial Knights. And It's a problem. Part of it that one of the things I relied on was that 3-unit redeploy. I actually would play a lot of mind games with the 3-unit redeploy. If you watch I won't get into it because it's part 2, but I will often feint to one side with my deployment and make my opponent think I'm going to go really hard on one side. And then if they do respond and start placing something on that side, I will pick all that stuff up and just kind of concede that side turn one. Because like I said, I'm really okay if they get their natural and I got my natural. I'm not okay if they all into me on one side. So I need to spread out and make it appear that I'm going to be playing for all 3 of these objectives. When in reality, I know with my 4 damaging units, I can really only pick up one side. I think as this detachment gets more popular and as time goes on, players will start to realize how much damage it actually can do and how not durable it is because it has no defensive strats and pretty bad defensive data sheets. But part of my strength in going to this event was, a lot of my opponents had played maybe one game against it and they weren't playing against an opponent that would actually deploy most of their army and then pick it up. So I was able to kind of do a lot of fake outs, deploy evenly, and then pick up almost entirely one side and play for the two other sides. But yeah, a full on pressure army would probably fold pretty quickly here. But fortunately, because of Knights and Death Guard, like melee is kind of dead right now, sadly, which is sad for me. But so there was very few pressure armies in the top tables, so I didn't have to worry about that.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. And I love that you can just kind of openly acknowledge one of the weaknesses of this army, but also acknowledge the meta. Great read on the meta, seeing a lot of knight armies, not much melee armies. It wasn't an environment where this list was going to struggle. And this army is like strange, kind of got a lot of rules. I played against it 3 times personally. And I would consider myself a little above average in 40K. And I still
just a little bit.
Yeah, right. I have not wrapped my head around this detachment, how to play against it either. So great pick there, especially if you could feel comfortable with it throughout the thing. Now, I know you had a plan to get the game going, which is lone ops, lone objectives, but that's sketchy, right? Like, they're OC1, maybe OC2, if you put 2 of them on there. Like, your opponent can just put dudes on objectives and contest your stuff while you're up in reserve trying not to, get a hit in the face. So how do you hold primary and score primary?
Great question. Yeah, so if I went first, especially, honestly, I usually wouldn't hold my natural by the end of that first turn unless I put a Nord on something. We'll talk about it in part 2, but I did play against elves 3 times, 3 Eldari players, and I will say that I was never comfortable putting the Nord on my natural, and that meant I did not ever hold my natural turn 2 because they would put 5 warp spiders, 5 corsairs, 5 of anything on the side that has a lictor, and often. What I find is these kind of players are not afraid to trade 5 of something for a lictor. That it'll happen almost every time. And I was okay with that too. I kind of need us to get low resources anyway, so to get the screens down. So you're right. Basically, if I went first against an army that had sufficient anti-tank, which would kill my Norn, I wouldn't hold my own primary, but I was very confident they also would not hold their 5 primary because on their turn 2, I'm picking up, I'm shooting the stuff on their natural, or if I don't feel comfortable doing that, I'm putting 10 gargoyles and I'm just taking it from them. So you'll see in part 2 that I have a lot of scores that are like in the 70s and the 80s. I have a couple 90 pluses, but it's mostly because in those games, we're just smashing each other's primary, but I'm probably the best secondary scorer around besides Eldar with the Biovore and all these little gribbly guys. So at that point, I can trade even there. And if they don't have anti-tank, for example, like in my Orc matchup, I just throw the Norn on the natural and say, hey, I'll just tow it on. It's not advanced and chargeable turn 1. What are you going to do about it? And the answer is they really can't do much. The funny thing is I actually do think that if I played against World Eaters or Stormlance, Dark Angels or something like that, that would be a problem. If they can put a real threat on my natural, where I don't want to put the Norn, and also what I try to kill back is not going to die, like 5 Deathwing Knights, it would be a real problem. But just like we talked about before, the meta has so depressed these advanced and charged melee armies that I didn't play a single one, and I wouldn't have expected them to do very well. I would just basically expect them to get knocked out before I fought them.
Yeah, I think that served you pretty well based on what I could see of the meta. I think that's a great approach to primary. Like, instead of trying to put a square peg in a round hole and try to force the primary. You allow your opponent to come towards you. You're okay with those trades for Black Orb Spiders for a Lictor, just to get their resources depleted so you can get better drops later and really focus on that end game. And you're not falling behind because you're contesting with Gargoyles or just disrupting their primary in some capacity. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Exactly.
So, talk to me about this Nord and how you did use it for primary control. Was it pretty much always to um, lock down your expansion at some point, or did you ever like mark the middle objective?
I only ever marked my natural. You know, because of how anti-tank, anti-knight the meta is right now, even having the one Nord in your list is a risk, and I think that that's probably the most contentious part of this entire army. And if I wasn't playing on GW, especially, I wouldn't bring it. But there are a lot of long ways kind of deployments where she can toe into your natural and not get shot by very much turn one. But if I put her in the middle, I think she's going to get shot by my opponent's entire armies right away. And like I said, like everybody was teched up, tons of anti-knight going into this event. But once again, if I toe the Nord on my natural and they pop out 2 to 3 anti-tank, and because she's going to be rolling 4 up invulns, 5 up feel no pains, we all know how squirrely that can get. There are some rounds where she got shot by 2 or 3 anti-tank and she took no damage, and there are some games where she died my bottom turn 1 because I tried it and it didn't work. But it's super swingy, and so if my opponent kind of goes half in and they want to only put 1 piece or 2 piece, she's going to live, and I'm going to pick those 2 up. I'm going to, teleport a Tyrannofex 48 inches away that they can't shoot back, and I'm going to kill them. So, it was a good tech piece. I was debating with my teammate Ken back and forth on it. He ran 2, I ran 1. And I do think it's divisive, but it got the party started, and there was just nothing else I could take that I could feel confident putting on my natural and having a shot of living. So I felt really good about it by the end, but obviously, my last 2 games against Death Guard and Knights, they just have the damage to do it. And in my Knights game, they didn't. She lived pretty much the entire game. They decided, I'm not going to try to kill her, and that's one of the most damaging armies in the game. So yeah, I think it was a good piece. It's swingy. It's a little hard to depend on, but I think it is a real problem for some armies to deal with.
Makes perfect sense to me. Okay, Jeff, just a couple more questions before we head off to part 2. We had the Swarmlord in here, and he's like super badass, but also he's a piece I don't see too often. Talk to me about the Swarmlord. What's he doing for you?
Yeah, I just realized I never mentioned this Warlord in terms of my damaging pieces, and it's because he's so important for generating CP for me. So if you're not familiar with him, he has like an okay flamer, kind of surprisingly 2 damage. He has 8 great attacks in melee, but most importantly, he has a 12-inch Vectora, which is raises your opponent's usage of CP by 1 if he's within 12. And the most important part is he gives me +1 CP. And I know that on the middle turns of the game, I'm spending 2 CP a turn minimum to up down 1 unit and then site to site teleport another unit between 2 tunnels. So that only leaves me 1 more CP, because of the Swarmlord again, that +1. If I don't bring him, that's all of my CP. It means I'm not doing anything else. I'm not recycling my missions. I'm not doing sustained 1 ignore cover. So I need the CP. He's really expensive though. He's 220. You can get a walking Hive Tyrant or a flying Hive Tyrant for way cheaper, but they can only refund CP within 12 of them. And oftentimes I'm picking up units that are like on the other side of the board. And so I didn't get that much testing with this army before I brought it to Tacoma, I'll be honest. So I took the safest guaranteed option because I knew how much CP I'd be spending. And the unfortunate part about all that is he's so expensive and I'm scared to lose him. It's a really bad place to be. It's a big fail point in my final game against Steve Trimble. When I watched the stream back yesterday, I used him way too late because I was scared to lose him and I should have used him earlier. And then against Knights, he has to be my Warlord to give me the CP. And so here's like a 220 point unit I have to save until turn 4, turn 5, because if they kill him, they get an army-wide 5-up feel no pain and like a bunch of CP. So it's a horrible choice. I would expect moving forward, a lot of players will take the walking tyrants or the flying tyrants. But for me, knowing I wasn't going to get enough reps to like optimize my play enough to always have the unit I wanted to lift up be within 12 of it and think about that constantly. Having the extra CP in my pocket was super worth the extra, whatever it is, like 40 to 60 points. And, and he's a late game beat stick. He'll come out turn 4, turn 5, and he'll still mess things up. But I think that's one of the things that we'll see Subterranean players optimize out of their list as we go forward. I've seen John Lennon, playing with all kinds of different HQs instead of him. But he did well. He did great for me in this event.
That's awesome. I always am terrified of this guy. I think he hits super hard and he's a vector, and I hate that. Apparently, CP matters to your army, so that's great. And late game, he shows up turn 4 and 5 and just wrecks my stuff. So I'm sad to see him go if that's where you think the list is headed. Perhaps I'm happy. Awesome, Jeff. Before we head over to part 2 to talk about your games in great detail, I got one more question for you. If you had a piece of advice to help someone who's maybe less experienced at Warhammer looking to get better, what would it be?
Yeah, I got to listen to a lot of these since I listen to the podcast every week, and I'll say one that I haven't heard before that's a kind of a personal one for me, and that one is I give myself grace to lose games. I went on this journey where I would go in 3 at RTTs before, a few years ago when my first GT, and now I have a shot at winning these larger ones. And there were some times in the middle there where I would consider myself kind of like a mid-table warrior. I'd play against players that would have like a little worse sportsmanship or take the game real serious. And I'd be frustrated after those games. And I'd be like, oh man, do I have to be one of these guys to do that? And I actually realized, I don't actually care about that. I want to get better at the game. I just want to play my best. And if I play against a new detachment in an army that I've never played before and I lose, or if I go to a practice game and I want to try something, before the game, I just try to tell myself, like, I always want to learn as much as I can from this game. I'll even tell my opponent, like, I'm going to try my hardest, but I don't care about like winning or losing this game, to be honest. I just want to play really well, and I want to, learn about how my list works or how your list works, and just kind of get that intention out there, both to myself and to my opponent, so that when things get tough, I don't, get frustrated. I don't, feel like I need to batten down and play really hardcore. And also it helps me learn more when I don't put the onus on myself to win, especially in situations where it doesn't even matter to win. And that's most of the time. Obviously if I go to Tacoma, I'm going to try to play my best, and it's what I practice for. But in my league games, in my smaller RTT, GT games, whatever it is, I just give myself space to hey, I'm going to learn a lot from this game. I don't actually care about, winning or losing from it. I just want to learn maximally. And by relieving myself of all that, I become, a better sport, a better player. I'm learning more about my opponent's armies. They're probably having a really good time. And so I think, I only got that a year or two ago, and I've been playing now, I guess, for 6 years or something like that. So I think that's really helped me to learn faster and become a better player quickly.
That's amazing. That is such a good answer. I have never heard that answer in 300 episodes, as you mentioned. But oh my God. Giving yourself some, forgiveness for losing, not expecting to lose, but it's fine. It happens. That's not even what it's about. I think that is so healthy and so important, because everybody on that competitive ladder, especially the higher you get, really puts pressure on themselves to win. And that does no good for anybody. Makes you a worse opponent, makes you, I guess, more egotistical, just does not bode well. So, Jeff, awesome mantra, awesome approach to Warhammer, great ambassadorship of the hobby, and amazing Tyranid list that you came up with or, worked on and took to the tournament. Really amazing run. Second place, and as you said, nothing to be ashamed about, something to be super proud of. In fact, it's second out of 454 people. Really, really great stuff. Congratulations.
Thanks so much, Nick. I really appreciate it. And shout out my teammates on XPC and the Riot guys that really have helped me get here, and listening to this podcast, other podcasts like that. It's an awesome community. And, I'm just really appreciative I was able to put up this result. And it's because I learned so much from you guys. So really appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your experiences with us. It's been an honor and a pleasure. All right, let's go over to Patreon. That's where our subscribers hang out. That's where all the cool stuff is. That's where it gets you access to our Discord, by the way, where you can talk to Jeff or myself or other members of the Art of War team. And you're going to get to go round by round with Jeff and his super cool, one-of-a-kind, one-of-a datasheet Tyranid list. So we're going to go round by round through the tournament, and we'll catch you later, folks.
Like what you just listened to? Check out Art of War Down Under and Art of War Unbroken on the competitive 40K network. theartofwar40k.com.